Emerging medical technologies such as telemedicine are transforming the way we approach healthcare, making it possible for a doctor to diagnose a patient from a distance through video conferencing and digital diagnostic tools such as electronic stethoscopes.
She had a temp, it was 101.1. Her pulse ox was 88% on room air. And her blood pressure was 117/84.
Let's take a listen to her heart and lungs. Let's start with the heart. All right, the heart's nice and regular. Let's take a listen to her lungs.
Deep breath.
Take some deep breaths. All right, let's do number one. She has probably bronchitis, so let's rule out a pneumonia tonight. Can you do a stat chest x-ray? Start her on some Robitussin and cc's 3 times a day as needed for 1 week. Because of the wheezing, we could start her on some nebulizer every 8 hours.
Big question with the telemedicine is whether or not it's okay for them to be reviewed by a doctor remotely as opposed to them having to be transported to an emergency room. And if it's a situation where it can be managed here, generally it's a lot better to do that.
We felt very much this was a win-win for everyone involved. We're talking the resident, the patient, we're talking about the doctor, the nurse.
It's a really great benefit in the subacutes. When a doctor is not here, you feel supported. They're just a phone call away, and you can see them on the screen. They can see the patient. I can pan into certain areas that they can look at, like the feet, the arms, a rash. Anything, it's wonderful, especially if I'm not quite sure of what's going on. The doctor, it feels so comfortable to have a professional right there to help you with the situation.
And then I found out they're going to have this telemedicine where they're going to have 24/7 care, and where the doctors could do face-to-face encounter, see the patients, and actually diagnose and treat while they're here. I think it's a great value to my parents.
The doctor came on, they brought that machine in, and I said to myself, isn't that ridiculous? But as it turned out, he asked some very important questions.
It's good for the person, they don't have to rush to a hospital. They could talk to the doctor on the TV screen. It's much better than going in an ambulance.
Advocates of telemedicine believe it will not only improve the patient experience, but drastically reduce healthcare costs. In this edition of Pro Se Nation, Understand the Law for Oneself, we're going to explore the current and upcoming laws surrounding this new technology and the legal issues that relate to the rights of the individual patient. I'm Mary Lynn Chiave, and welcome. Joining me today are telemedicine trailblazers from Athene TeleHealth, based in Raritan, New Jersey. Dr. Bobby Malik is the Chief Medical Officer, and Mel Castro, the Executive Director of Athene, that offers telemedicine services to nursing facilities throughout New Jersey. We are also joined by attorney Thomas Kamvosoulis, an associate with the law firm Brach Eichler, with offices in New Jersey, New York, and Florida. This is exciting. This is cutting edge. Some might say bleeding edge. For those of us who remember when a doctor making house calls was actually customary, right? Not that unusual. Some have compared this to kind of an electronic version of the doctor visiting with his black bag, right? It's amazing.
It's exactly that, yeah.
But obviously with any new technology, and often we find that the laws do not keep pace with the technology, so that's one of the reasons we're here today. So I want to start off with basically, Bobby, I want to ask you, tell us a little bit about Athene TeleHealth and how it's transforming healthcare today.
We really strive to provide excellence clinical care in nursing homes. So for now, we are in nursing homes and providing clinical care when patients decompensate in the middle of the nursing home, in the middle of the night or on the weekends if they're not doing well.
instead of the doctor. Sometimes they go home at 5 o'clock and they're after their rounds in the nursing home. So there's multiple hours in the day and on the weekends and on holidays where there's no doctor around or there's a snowstorm. So we provide a service where we put a very high advanced telemedicine cart in the facility. And then the nurse activates a number and our doctors pop up on the screen within seconds to see the patient who might be short of breath, has a fever, who is technically decompensated, and the nurse needs backup. And so we then have a digital stethoscope, which the technology, even I'm impressed with day by day. The stethoscope, you could hear somebody's heart rate 1,000 miles away. You could hear if their irregular heartbeat, murmurs, crackles in the lung. And basically we then, after we've face-to-face seen the patient, we give the nurse orders in that building to try to keep the patient in the facility and save the patient from going back to the hospital. And the real push nowadays has been not going back to the hospital. One of the advantages for patients is that, it's well known now in studies, elderly, demented people do worse in hospitals. So if we can treat their pneumonia, treat their congestive heart failure, treat their COPD exacerbation right in the comfort of their own home, which is the nursing home, then that improves their quality of life. They don't get delirious, which carries a high mortality. Delirium in hospitals is deadly. So we provide, that we train the nurses and they start IVs right in the nursing home. So nursing homes are really becoming mini hospitals.
Right.
And with our help and our doctors on call to support the nursing staff in the middle of the night or on weekends, we support them and we tell them what to do in terms of the medications. We give them orders about quality of care and what we need to do, and then we talk to families.
Great.
And families really love this. When the doctor pops up on the screen and a family member is at bedside with their loved one who's not doing well, it's a tremendous comfort to the families to see that a doctor, they're shocked. They're like, you just listened to my mom's heart and lungs? I'm like, yeah, with great clarity. And they're very impressed by the technology and the fact that we're going to try to save their family.
Now, you've talked about the savings to potential savings to the healthcare industry. Tell us a little bit about that.
With rising costs in healthcare, I think multiple billions are spent on readmissions to hospitals per year. And so we have data in our facilities that we have contracted with. We basically cut their ER evaluations by 70%. So those patients that routinely might go to the emergency room, they're not going to the emergency room anymore. They're being seen by us, a fall with suspected fracture, fevers, all these diagnoses that traditionally might go to the emergency room. Now they have the doctor with the nurse there guiding them and taking care of that patient right in-house. So it really saves literally millions, probably a year at least in the long run, by not going back to the hospital. And then let's face it, hospital stays are very costly. And besides the cost, we talked about the quality of care to patients. So it's all around a major savings to CMS.
Incredible. So Mel, you have a nursing background, correct? And so how do you see telemedicine changing or improving the patient experience? Bobby talked a little bit about that, but do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Being in the healthcare sector for more than 15 plus years, I've seen nursing facilities and owners share the same issue, which is rehospitalization. And as the hospitals are now being pushed by the government at a higher level of standard, now that then trickles down to nursing home facilities that have to perform at a certain level as well, to become part of as a performance improvement for them as well. So with that, ultimately in the end, it affects the patient's outcomes, patient experience. And with that, now with telemedicine, the patient experience changes because we have the doctors right on the box, right? That's what they call us now, the doc in the box. The patients have the luxury of staying in the comfort of their own homes or in a long-term care setting without ever leaving there and ending up at the hospital, waiting in the ER for countless hours just to get a diagnosis, which our physicians, the board-certified physicians, can do right through video conferencing with the patients. Okay, so they truly love this, and countless hours waiting in the ER is no good for them. Like Dr. Malik said, patients, families love this, and they get very comfortable with this new type of technology.
How does it change things for the hospital or the nursing home staff, for instance?
When there's a change, a lot of people are always opposed to it.
Possibly resistant.
Yeah, possibly, yeah, definitely resistant. But in the end, the more they use it, the more comfortable they get, the more confident they get with their assessment skills. They learn new skills and new tactics. They see how the physician interacts with the patient, and they take that skill set with them. And the more they use it, the more comfortable they get. And really, a lot of nurses reported to me that they've felt job fulfillment, job satisfaction, because they've actually felt like they've saved a patient from leaving the facility and ending up at the ER for no apparent reason, when they know they have the skills to take care of them right there and then in their facility.
Right. How is it that, so if you didn't have this technology, the nurses really can't assess, they can assess to a certain point, but then in terms of getting a prescription or something like that, that can't really happen without the doctor intervening, right?
Yeah, well,
being part of the process.
Absolutely. Well, traditionally, it's been based on a phone call. So, they would call the doctor on call for that patient, and they would tell the story of, okay, Mrs. X has a fever and shortness of breath, and the doctor would really at the mercy of the nurse's presentation. And if the nurse is feeling a little nervous, I've done this many times myself in my practice, I'm sending the patient out. I can't see that patient. I don't know what's going on with that patient.
Right.
I'm at the mercy of somebody else describing it. With this, the beauty of technology, when a physician sees the patient, they know right then. They have an idea right there that this patient is going to head south, or we could save this patient. And one of the common complaints to touch up on Mel's fact with the staff, a lot of the hospitals, nurses and staff members, they wonder what a patient's doing in the emergency room.
Right.
This is a classic story for every ER. That in the middle of the night, they're like, why is this person in the ER right now? And just for a little bit of a fever, a little bit of a chest pain that sounds atypical, a little bit of shortness of breath that's stable. So these things are, the ERs are really going to appreciate this, with them seeing now real patients that are acutely emergent, things that we can handle in a nursing home or a subacute facility. And they're seeing a lot more sicker people in these nursing homes.
Now, do most nursing homes, are they equipped to do an EKG or X-rays, that kind of thing?
So our experience is about 50-50, but when they consult with us, we almost insist on it, because now we're seeing sick people. We want to be able to do a stat EKG. Most of them do X-rays that come back within a couple hours. Most of them do blood work. But EKGs is a hit or miss. But when they contract with us, we almost insist on it, because we're taking that facility to the next level.
Right.
That EKG is a critical thing, because frankly, 60-70% of chest pains really don't need to go out. Right. They're atypical. They're not, so these patients now in traditional ways, they sit in the hospital, they get admitted for 3 days, 5 specialists on the case, the patient got confused, now more bedridden, decubitus ulcer, now back to the rehab. This is a story that's been going on for decades.
And we're talking, what is the average hospital stay a day? Anywhere?
No, it's probably 3 to 5 days for certain diagnoses. It depends on the diagnosis.
Okay.
But so, for a chest pain, they might stay for a day, but then, something else popped up because they're more confused, or now they have a fever now from the hospital and acquired infections.
And what is the average cost associated per day? I heard somewhere between $2,000 to $4,000 a day. Or
at the minimum, if it's a telemetry floor, that could be as high as $5,000, just to monitor that patient who's really wasn't cardiac to begin with.
Right.
So when this is the beauty of the telemedicine. Our buildings have EKGs that we contract with. So they pop the EKG on the screen. We see the EKG. I have an old one to compare with sometimes or not. And I let the family member know, I let the patient know, by the way, this EKG is definitely not showing a heart attack. And they feel better about that. And they get live proof right there, instead of sitting in an ambulance and finding out later.
Well, so clearly there are plenty of benefits to this, right? So it can perhaps become complicated when the law enters into it. Okay, and
It usually does.
right. And that's why we
or
have-
legislatures, actually.
Right, both. So Tom, yeah, I'd like you to address basically, does the legal, if you will, responsibility between the doctor and the patient change once you have this new paradigm of telemedicine or telehealth?
I think the short answer is no. But I think what's should be comforting to the patient is that the answer is no.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the patient relationship with the physician is stable and it stays the same. And I think, if anything, what Athene is going to strive to do is ensure that its doctors understand that regardless of whether you're seeing a patient through a screen or seeing a patient live or consulting with a nurse on the phone, that the relationship is the same, that the patient should receive the same level of care and the same type of care that they would otherwise receive. And I think that at first blush, that might be difficult for some to comprehend because you are seeing the person, through a monitor as opposed to being right there in front of them. But I think the beauty of the service is that the patient will receive the same level of care and the same experience with their physician that they would otherwise see live.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it probably doesn't vary greatly from a face-to-face interactive real-time situation because, okay, God forbid something go wrong. If it were if a doctor were present, there would still be the same questions about, was it the tools? Was it the doctor? Was it the staff? Was it the reaction? Right? I mean,
exactly.
The same issues probably would arise, right?
It should be the idea, and the whole idea behind the platform is that all of those issues remain stable and don't and shouldn't be different.
Mm-hmm.
And as technology improves, we would think that would become even greater, not worse.
Right. When it comes to HIPAA laws and patient privacy, you now have, well, we're all concerned about how stable our connections are these days, right? And who could hack into them or not. How does that change when a doctor is now diagnosing a patient at a distance over the internet?
I can tell you that from a legal perspective, presently, HIPAA, the whole concept of HIPAA goes to the idea of protected health information, which is which is defined by HIPAA and its implementing regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Those laws do not change.
Okay.
The protections to patients under those laws do not change by virtue of the fact that your doctor is seeing you remotely.
The quality of the visit with the physician that night or that time, we have a digital stethoscope, which is actually stronger than the regular stethoscope. So everything that we need to see, the zoom is better than the naked eye.
Wow.
The stethoscope has a very powerful audio. And so the visit itself is just as good as a regular visit. And I think even the American Telemedicine Association has confirmed their views that this is like a regular visit.
Right.
And getting back to the security part, the software that we use is all HIPAA compliant. The video is HIPAA compliant. When patients enter the facility, they sign a statement that if your loved one is decompensating or if you decompensate, you are allowed to use that physician. In 7 years of doing this, I actually have had maybe one person say, I don't want a telemedicine visit in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them embrace it because they're not feeling good. If they get to see a doctor that time, they're very happy to see you. And so basically, the software that we use is HIPAA compliant. And we also have access nowadays. Most facilities have EMR, electronic medical records. So we have actually have access and passwords that are HIPAA compliant to those. So after our interaction with the patient, we actually write the note into that EMR. So the patient's own doctor, after I've seen a very sick patient, and we saved them for, say, congestive heart failure, and we started IV Lasix, the own doctor in that own EMR, in-house EMR, which is fully secure, our notes are in there. So we're kind of embedded with the facilities that we contract with and that we're with to kind of keep major compliance with HIPAA.
If a patient is considering a certain nursing home, but maybe they're not sold on the telemedicine thing, they have a right to opt out if they're going to be at that facility?
Well, I think that raises a couple of interesting questions, but I think the straight answer is when you're looking to go into a nursing facility, the patient can learn from the nursing facility staff how their call coverage is utilized. By and large, currently the telemedicine services, at least that Athene provides, are during what I would call the overnight shift or holidays and weekends. So the rest of the time there is a live doctor to see the patients.
So it actually attracts patients that they could say that in a snowstorm on the weekends when my doctor's not around, I will get a board certified doctor seeing my loved one to take care of them in the middle of the night.
Tom, are there any other legal issues that you see on this landscape right now? And I know, again, it's emerging, so I'm sure that there'll be...
I think that what we don't know presently that is what's most interesting. I mean, several states are attempting to pass laws related to telemedicine, but I think what you said at the open, Marilyn, was poignant, which was that the law doesn't often keep pace with technology, and I think that's where we are with telemedicine as a whole. For example, different states have different laws, and it's sort of in a state of flux at this point as to whether, again, just for example, a doctor in the state of Tennessee can see a patient in the state of New Jersey, and vice versa, and under what circumstances that can happen. States have varying requirements for whether or not physicians who are part of a practice all need to be registered in every state in which they practice, and whether or not the practice can cross state lines. With different rules about the corporate practice of medicine, and who can own parts of a medical practice. So because there's not a uniformity there, I think it gives practitioners, meaning medical practitioners, a lot to think about when they're starting to grow this business and expand.
Now, do you have a lot of interaction with the patients? What are some of the comments that you've gotten? Are they overall sort of embracing, or are they resisting? What?
In the beginning, they were somewhat reluctant.
Are they concerned?
Not so much concerned, just not used to the new technology. Like I said earlier, they're more traditional kind of medicine, that they want to see a physician coming in with a white coat, with a stethoscope on their neck. But now, as they see it more and more, they become more comfortable with it, and they're confident that they're going to be taken care of the wee hours of night, weekends, and 24 hours on holidays as well. That they're always going to have a physician right by their side. One push of a button, they're right there without waiting.
Bobby, actually, I have asked you in the pre-interview about legislative laws, some of the laws that are starting to address telemedicine.
There's a lot of bills as we speak in front of Congress right now, and one of them is called the Medicare TeleHealth Parity Act, and they're trying to say this started out 10 plus years ago in rural areas. At least a decade plus ago, and so they're trying to say now that metropolitan areas, cities, they all need this. And so one of the bills that they're proposing is we can't just start only doing this in rural areas. And so there's speaking of the licenses in different states, there's a medical license interstate compact that they're talking about, where so far 18 states have joined. The closest one to us is Pennsylvania, but they're going to share. So if I have one license in Pennsylvania, I could essentially have 18 licenses. There's a lot of legislation out there. I believed, and I was comparing this to the Wild Wild West to you a couple of weeks ago, this is going to explode. So it's inevitable that this is going to really catch, and it already is obviously getting very big, but it's going to get just pervasive in society.
What would you most like to convey to the average person out there about telemedicine right now?
This increases quality of life. I think there's no denying that. And that's why the legislation will catch up, because it's going to actually it's one of the perfect storms. It's going to save money, literally billions, and it's going to actually very much improve quality of life in disabled and elderly people, whether they're at home or whether they're in a nursing home. The visit is, as a physician for 15 years in practicing geriatrics, it's as good as a real life visit.
No?
Right. So for the families, I just want to make sure that they know, that everybody knows, that telemedicine is not here to be replacements to attending physicians.
Right.
We actually collaborate with them to have continuity of care, and which is what all patients, residents need in a facility. Because without that, it can't just stop in the middle of the night, because your life, the care continues on throughout the whole day, throughout the next day. So we need to have that continuous care. And I think that's the most important part here for me as a clinician, that we continue to collaborate with attending physicians, and that's part of our services as well. Is we make sure we communicate, make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody's on the same team, and everybody knows exactly what's going on.
Right, right. And Tom, will you give them some legal assurance? No, I know you can't do that.
They stole my thunder with those fantastic answers. I think I'll leave it like this. I encourage people to take the time to learn about the service. I encourage patients who may have either themselves or loved ones who might be going into a nursing facility at some point soon. I encourage them to read and learn and use the Google machine to have them to have it explain.
We love our Google.
To have it explain what the service is and how it can be of value to them, and why they shouldn't be afraid of it, because I think people are just reluctant to change oftentimes. I think when it comes to practitioners who are looking to get into this space, understand what you don't understand. And I think, take the time to research and know what, depending on what state you are in, what regulations, if any, govern the practice of medicine as a whole, and then what specific regulations govern telemedicine, so that when you decide to get into this space, that you're doing it correctly. So I think it's just an overall message of take the time to really understand what this new sort of phase in medical care is all about.